University Place, and I'm calling to order the October 3rd, 2022 University Place City Council meeting. And with that, we'll start with our roll call, please.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, present.
Councilmember McCluskey. Mayor Worthington.
And Mayor Worthington is here too, so thank you.
Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi, I believe, is excused this evening.
And Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, I believe, is on his way, but I haven't heard exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. And with that, we are going to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm asking Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa to lead us, please, in the pledge.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. And, excuse me, Councilmember McCluskey, would you mind making seconds as appropriate for tonight's motions? Thank you. Thank you. It would be great. Yes, it's your turn. And let's move on for our next process, which is approval of the agenda.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve, and do we have a second?
I second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second, and this is a consent motion. Are there any objections to the approval of the agenda as distributed? Any objections? I don't see any, and the agenda for this evening is approved. That brings us to public comments, and this evening we have an opportunity for public comments, as is our habit. On the screen are instructions on how people can make comment via the internet or by phone. And if you could, we're now on that portion of the agenda. This is the opportunity for members of the public to provide comments to the City Council for any items not appearing in the agenda or on the consent agenda. And with that, I'll invite any members of the public who would like to come forward. You are welcome to make a comment. You have 3 minutes of the opportunity for that, or 3 minutes of time to make your statement. Is there anyone here that would like to do that? Anyone here? I don't see any members of the public want to come forward. Do we have anybody virtually?
Do not.
All right, very good. Then we'll move on to our next segment of the agenda, which is the consent agenda. And excuse me. On the consent agenda, I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I would entertain a second.
I'll second.
Very good. Councilmember McCluskey seconds. And with that, do we have any objections to the approval of the consent agenda? Any objections there? I don't see any. The consent agenda is approved as distributed. That brings us to our city manager report. And Mr. Sugg.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, I'm going to be turning the city manager's report over to our vendor, Civic Plus, who maintains our city's website, and also an exciting new portal for citizen public request. As you know, before the pandemic, we were looking for ways to make it easier for citizens in the city to connect with the city. So we've, over the pandemic, set us back a little bit, but we now have a new citizen request portal that allows citizens to submit a concern directly to city staff. The app, which is commonly known as SeeClickFix, and you're going to learn about this in a moment, has been branded for the city as UP Works, and is available now on the city's website as well as a mobile app for both Android and Apple devices. So tonight we have invited Elliot Olson from the vendor Civic Plus to give you a short tour of the application, and I'll turn it over to Elliot. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm Elliot from Civic Plus. I've been with Civic Plus about 5 years, and I've had the immense pleasure of working with Glenn and Kyle to get C-Click Fix up and running. I know that I only have a couple minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let me know. Can you see my screen okay? Wonderful, wonderful. All right. So what I would like to do is kind of show you what a resident would experience when they're reporting a concern using C-Click Fix. So we do have an app as well. That's a little harder to show on my computer screen, but I promise it's great. But we also have a web portal, which is currently plugged in on your website and residents would be able to easily find. So that's what I'm going to demo today. This is a sandbox or a testing and training account that I'm demoing on. So I am not pretending that there is an issue in University Place that doesn't exist. This is just a training account for demo purposes. But a resident who came here to submit some kind of concern would just go to new request, and they would be brought to a map where they can, either drag and drop or type an address in. Now, we are so lucky to have a lot of organizations in your area using C-Click Fix, including the county that you're a part of, as well as Tacoma, Tukwila, and several others. So if somebody accidentally, entered an address in one of those areas, the report would go to the correct organization. It would not come to you. But we'll, for today's sake, stay in University Place, confirm that location, and then we're brought to a list of available categories for this location. So I can look through these, kind of see what I want to report. I guess I'll report a signs issue today. From here, I can add an image. This is optional, but we do recommend it. You can see we have some text here recommending, and I'll add, one of the most beautiful images I know of, the Kansas City Chiefs logo. We'll move on to the next steps, and then every resident will be prompted to add a description. On top of that, Kyle and Glenn have worked really hard on configuring some additional questions, other things that are nice to know. So for description, I'll say a work of art. Where is the sign located? In Kansas City. Probably wouldn't be your problem then, but for example's sake, we'll go with that. And then what type of sign is being reported? We'll say that it's an other. So I've answered the questions. This is what the resident would go through. They would just confirm, and then they could submit. As this request is worked by members of your organization, we're going to route it to the correct people and remind them of it via email. And then we're also going to give the residents updates when the request has been acknowledged and when it has been closed. If another resident tried to report this exact same issue, we would tell them that it's already in the system to save you the time of having to work it twice. So it's a pretty cool system. I know I'm probably out of time, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those as well.
We get a little bit of a whetting of the appetite here as we understand more. Councilmember Woods, just a moment. And Councilmember McCluskey, actually, is before Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is an amazing system. I wonder how, and this is probably a question for Mr. Sugg, in real time when a citizen clicks on something and it could be an emergent situation that they put in, how quickly would be the response to the interface of this software program?
I can answer on the software side of that, and then let you guys talk more about the workflow. On the software side, we'll send an email out to whoever's supposed to get that immediately. That being said, we do make it clear on all of our platforms that it is not, a replacement for 911. It's more of a replacement for 311. So anything that's an emergency, we still note that residents should call 911 if it's super urgent.
Okay. And how contingent on the accurate address is this system? Would just get into the vicinity of the issue? You know, some people don't really know, exact addresses when certain incidents has occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always a limitation of any geography-based system. A couple things about SeeClickFix that are really helpful are one, the image upload. So when you take a picture of something and then upload the image, we actually can use capabilities in our technology to match the image to an exact address. So if you don't know, but you have a picture, SeeClickFix probably can find the address using geodata in that picture. Now, additionally, we partner with Esri, Apple Maps, and Google Maps. So if somebody's there, even if they don't know what that address is, it's an intersection on their, walk with their dog, we'll find them using their, phone service.
Okay, so they can also upload a picture then, and then that could be get the location from the photograph. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying? That's pretty
absolutely.
cool. All right, well, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. I am on our homepage right now, and I am not seeing UP Works Quick Click Fix. I'm not seeing anything here. How do I navigate to this, and how hard is it for our citizens to find?
Let me show you how to get there from the website real quick. I'm going to share my screen again.
And by the way, while you're doing that, I do think this is a very cool app, and I'm glad we're doing it. This is something I think will be value added. I just want to make sure they can find it to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as it grows and you guys feel more comfortable, you definitely could add a button or something. Right now, under How Do I, if you go to submit a code complaint, the code department is who's mostly using this right now. So we're actually embedded directly on your website right here.
Enforcement, got it. Okay, thank you.
Very good. And let the record show that Councilmember Keel has joined us now. And with that, I'll go to Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, and I may have missed this in the presentation, but I do concur with the rest of the council that says this is a pretty awesome app for citizens to use. But I'm going to presume that, A, it requires a cell phone of sorts. Is that correct?
It does not. You can report things using the computer. Now, SeeClickFix also has something called a call taker interface. So if people called in on their home phone and reported something like they may have, done before, your team, the University Place staff can enter that call into SeeClickFix on behalf of a resident.
Okay. And then will this work on any phone app, i.e. an Android or Apple or whatever they have out there these days?
Yes, we have an Android and an Apple. So Google Play as well as the App Store. We're SeeClickFix, all one word in both of those stores.
Okay. And then my last question is, once that's reported, does the sender or the originator of that report get a confirmation back that an action has taken place or the city received it and did something with it?
Yes, absolutely. So as soon as they submit a concern, they'll get an email that's confirming that it went through. Then when the city acknowledges it, they'll get another email. They'll get email updates of any comments, kind of telling where the process is, and then an email when it's closed. Residents can limit those emails if they get tired of hearing from us, but typically we see that they like the cadence we're sending things at.
That's very nice. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Well, any other questions before we go back to Mr. Sugg? So I'm not, let's see. So, well, Elliot, thank you for the introduction to this app. It looks like a great tool for our citizens and for our city. So I'm looking forward to working with it myself and hearing about how our citizens are taking to it. But I suspect they'll be taking to it very well.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time.
Certainly. And I'll invite Mr. Sugg. Do you have anything further you'd like to add tonight?
Nothing. We're really pleased with this. I was excited to see the preview of this a few weeks back. Civic Plus has done some tremendous work on this, and we're just happy to bring it forward so the public can start using it. And with that, just one more comment, not on this topic, but on events. We have an special event coming up on October 14th, Market Square Oktoberfest, so 5 o'clock, 5 to 8. Thank you.
Very good, and looking forward to that. And I think there may be a beer garden involved with this.
I think there might just be
Okay,
that, yes.
all right. Well, I'm not that much of a beer drinker these days, but nonetheless, a couple of people still are, so we'll have a good time regardless.
Well, Mayor, that concludes my report.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you, Mr. Sugg. And City Plus looks like a good addition to us. I assume we'll be talking more about it in the weeks to come as well. That should then start going around the table with our council member reports, and we typically start with Councilmember Keel. So, welcome, Councilmember Keel. Do you have anything you'd like to report this evening? Oh, and let me get your mic on. There we are, sir.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention today, Pierce Transit did a groundbreaking on our south terminal for the BRT-1 route that's out toward Roy, that area down there. So we had great. I didn't attend, but it's a great turnout, I'm told. We had Senator Cantwell was scheduled to be there, as well as Representative Strickland and a whole host of other dignitaries, and that turned over some dirt, and we're starting the development on that terminus down there. So it was very, very good. That is what I want to report.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Keel. Glad to hear about it. It's a nice step forward with as the program and the system continues to grow. Thank you. Councilmember Wood, do you have a report this evening? And I'll get you on to here.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, nothing to report tonight.
Okay, thank you. And then Councilmember McCluskey.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Fleming. Okay, very good. And that brings us to Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
No reports, Mayor, but just to let you know, the busy man here, it's about to happen again. Between now and the next meeting, we'll be meeting with the Puget Sound Regional Council Economic Development Board, as well as the Puget Sound Regional Council, as well as the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board and the Operations Committee as well. So the next meeting, we should have quite a few reports. Well, actually, there will be one additional report, and that is the work group, PCRC work group for looking at the criteria by which we select projects and distribute monies, funds. So that'll be next.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And you do have lots going on, and appreciate those efforts. Well, that brings us to the mayor's report. And I was not at the last meeting of the City Council. I was doing some out-of-state work, along with having some vacation time too. But I wanted to thank Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa very much for handling things in my absence and running the meeting, and I had a chance to watch that meeting, and of course everybody did well, but it was quite the agenda, as a matter of fact, with a couple of extra activities. So, but thank you. Appreciate your good help, Mayor Pro Tem. I had a couple of things I wanted to report on, one of which is Congresswoman Strickland has provided a very nice thank you note. As you may remember, she participated in National Night Out and wanted to thank the council and the police chief and myself for the National Night Out event. And she Went on to say that the University Place has done a fantastic job with the planning of the activity. So I happen to agree with that and appreciate Congresswoman Strickland's mention and her participation in our community for National Night Out. I think hopefully this note from the House of Representatives will find its way to Jennifer, among others. So anyhow, but it was very kind to do. Speaking of working with our extended elected official family, I had the pleasure, though remote, of welcoming Senator Nobles, House Representative Levitt, and House Representative Brown-Nikowski from our State House and State Senate, just to be clear. City staff did a briefing with Mr. Sugg leading the way, and with Kevin Brusky and with Eric Fisan, also helping provide background on the city's policies on housing and zoning. And of course, Council, you might remember that was a bit of a topic on our legislative agenda, and will be again, yes. And so we wanted to provide some background, and I think the staff did, I'm sure, a very fine job of getting that information out to our representatives and our senator. And they will have some follow-up questions and such. But just to express our appreciation for Senator Nobles, Representative Levitt, and Brown-Nikowski for participating in this. Those were crowded schedules, and they made time to sit with our staff for about an hour all together. Not an easy thing for them to coordinate, and we appreciated them taking that time. As they have follow-up questions or need some further information, of course, we'll be available to do that. But Council wanted to make sure you knew that was happening as well. Also, in terms of things happening, as you may remember, I serve on the Rainier Communications Commission, and I follow Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, and some time ago, Councilmember Fleming also was a chair for that organization, and I'm the current chair for the organization. At the last meeting, while I was out of town, I was still able to participate in that meeting and run it remotely. Pierce County had an interesting proposal that I will be talking more about. But the proposal, in essence, is the potential for the county to pull out of the Rainier Communications Commission, and in the process of doing that, most likely, at least from the county's perspective, potentially they would be offering those same services to us under a contract. And it would be a contract for services that would be more directly provided by the county. At least that's the proposal. Now, this is early on, and I think there's a number of things to talk about at this point. This organization has been around about as long as the city, or maybe longer, as I think through it. I served on it previously in around 2005 or 2003 to 2008. There's a number of services that do get provided. So there's questions. If it does get dissolved, there are assets to figure out what happened to those assets. There are liabilities to figure out what happens to the liabilities. And there's staff and a number of concerns. So we'll work through those things. You'll hear more about this, but because we are talking about this now in public meetings, I thought it would be best if you became aware of this as soon as possible, and today is that day. So I'll be keeping you in touch. I know Matt Kaiser, our city attorney, is also engaged in this. There is a special meeting in the RCC coming up on the 15th of the month, if I have that date right, and will be solely for the purpose of starting a more in-depth discussion about this particular proposal. We're all sort of in the fact-finding phase of things now, but as I said, wanted to make you aware of it. We'll see what comes of it in the months to come. If you have any particular thoughts, let me know, and if it gets legs, some of the details get filled in, we'll bring those back to you, of course, for a more complete discussion of the item. I think that may cover my items for tonight. I do hope to see everyone, well, not everyone in the community, but a lot of the folks in the community at Oktoberfest on the 15th, or 14th rather, sorry, at 5 o'clock, and starting at 5. I'll be a little late, but anyhow, I'll be there. All right. We're going to move on to our next item, and I believe that's putting us into study session. Indeed it is. So we're going to end the regular session and move to study session. And now in our study session, we have an opportunity to hear from our Economic Development Commissioner, and Mr. Kuntz is here. Invite you to come forward, and love to hear how things are going with the Economic Development Commission, Advisory Commission, I should say.
Should be good now.
We're good now.
Okay, so I'm Joshua Kuntz. I'm representing the Economic Development Advisory Commission. Really just here to give an update on what the commission's been working on. Michael Gruner from the commission gave a last update in July, so it's just an update of what we've been working on for the last quarter or so. So our biggest project we've been working on is the ARPA Business Assistance Recommendation. We discussed this in February. We held special sessions in March and April. And then in June, we had an in-depth discussion about possible recommendations. And then in July, we finalized those recommendations. If you remember, I was here about a month ago and gave that recommendation to the City Council. We did not meet in August. We are next going to meet here in a couple of weeks. Our meetings that we have, we typically meet monthly unless we have a special session. You will be interested to hear that we have a business owner that is attending each one of our meetings. Gives them a chance to introduce themselves and their business to the commission. So I'll just share the business owners that have attended so far. So Brian Cox and Kay Pitch, owners of Fox Medical Center and My Own Gym, attended a meeting. Megan Douglas, owner of Serenity Spa. Sean Peterson, owner of Revolution Fitness. Xander, owner of Triumph Physical Therapy. David, owner of Bionic Design, a home-based business. Kyle Coleman, which is the assistant store manager of Fred Meyer. And Phoebe, owner of 253 Physical Therapy and Consult. So one of the things starting in June,
Can you move the mic up to you? I'm having a hard time hearing.
Sure. Is that better? Maybe
Pull it
I'll
up
just
towards you.
lean
Pull it up
forward.
toward you, the mic
Is that better?
toward you. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, that's better. So let's see. So in June, we started hybrid meetings again. So we, part of the commission is meeting on site. We're a very busy commission, so hybrid is working very well. So some of us are calling in, most of us are going on site. We are meeting at First Financial Northwest Bank in their conference room. So it gives us an opportunity, exposes commissioners to the business, who I mentioned before, business owners coming in, as well as the bank. Gives businesses an opportunity to see the work of the commission, and helps create relationships between the commissioners and business owners and managers. Let's see, the Economic Development Commission is attended by a commissioner from the Planning Commission. This arrangement allows the commissioners to understand the work of each commission. Additionally, since planning and economic development are so closely related, it often affords the opportunity to provide a perspective that is helpful. Planning Commissioner Chuck Foster regularly attends our meetings, and Planning Director Kevin Brisky brings the development perspective to our meetings. He gives an update at every meeting. And at the September meeting, the Economic Development Commission had a discussion regarding food truck regulation. Input from this discussion will be shared with the Planning Commission as they continue to work on this issue. And then finally, I mentioned we have an upcoming meeting in October. We're going to be discussing the 2023 work plan, and then that will be shared with the City Council in November.
Very good. Well, thank you, Commissioner Kuntz. I appreciate your details on that. Look forward to seeing you again in November. But before we get there, let's see if we have any questions amongst the council members. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that you made a recommendation to the Planning Commission on the food truck issue, correct?
Yes.
So can you tell us what that recommendation was?
So we didn't We didn't make a final recommendation. It was more a discussion about what the zoning would be. So they wanted some input on specific zoning requirements. So we had a discussion with them. I think there's more to come on that. We didn't make a final recommendation. So it was finally about like, zoning about how many food trucks would be allowed in a certain area for a certain period of time. So that was the discussion.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Very good. And Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your report. Certainly is something that I'm very much interested in. I think a lot of my colleagues are around economic development within the city. One of the things we do with our commissions is that we actually work with them and they actually have a work plan for the year. So can you talk a little about what the last work plan that you received from the council, and then kind of what you guys are working on and what the status is on all those things?
I don't have our 2022 work plan in front of me right now. It was basically just to work with the city council on any projects that are delivered to our commission and work on them as priority number one. So the ARPA funds was discussed in the city council meeting and then given to our commission to work on, and that has been basically the major focus and project for 2022. So that's going to be the discussion here in our meeting this month about what we're going to be working on in 2023. I would love feedback from City Council about things that we could be working on and projects that we could be working on. I think we did a lot of good work on the ARPA funds and how we are going to spend those funds. So if there is ideas that you have that we can incorporate in 2023, I would love that feedback.
Great, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. I knew we talked about the ARPA and we talked about the trucks, and just kind of couching that in your report would have been a lot real clear for me. So yes, I remember that. And I guess, Mayor, I know we work on this all the time, and I just want to put my oar in the water that that we work very clearly with this commission to give them a work plan. And however, I know we're doing that, but I just want to call out the obvious that we continue to do that with this group.
Certainly appreciate that, and I think
Thank
we'll
you. Thank you.
have a chance to discuss that in November. So, yeah. Excellent. Anything else? Not seeing any at this point. Is there anything we can do for you in terms of, as commission chair? Do you have the resources you believe are appropriate and such?
I believe we have the resources appropriate. Becky is helping the commission, and she's been a very good help. She always is very helpful to us. I would say what I mentioned to Mr. Keel about the 2023 plan and providing input from the council would be very helpful for us. Typically, our plans are pretty general to give ourselves latitude to be able to take on projects throughout the year. But if those projects are identified in 2022 for 2023, I think that would be very helpful to plan out the year as well.
Great. Well, we'll give that some thought and some discussion here, but appreciate that. Thank you for your work and being with us this evening, and please express our gratitude to your fellow commission members too.
I will. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So that brings us to another commission report, this time from our Planning Commission. And Commission Chair David Graybill will be with us. In fact, he's on the screen now. And I believe Mr. Graybill, or Chair Graybill, how are you this evening?
Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
I'm chagrined that I'm not with you in the rarefied air of the city council chambers. Had I known that you were so manifest in person, I would have joined you, but here I am.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you join us. Thank you. Well, I wanted to just hear a bit how things are going with the Planning Commission. We've been keeping you rather busy, I believe, and wanted to just make sure, just hear about how things are progressing and any thoughts you have.
All right, well, I appreciate this opportunity. I believe that it's not been too long ago that our Vice Chair, Frank Boykin, was with you and gave you an update, so please forgive me if I reiterate some of the points that he recently made. But we've been busy meeting each month and sometimes twice a month. We are currently down one Planning Commission member due to the resignation of Wayne Manny, and we look forward to applicants and you reviewing them and putting us back into full force. We do have a good group, and earlier this year, we made a recommendation to the council for zoning code text amendments to help facilitate the redevelopment of the Hap Bosniak commercial site. I know we're all looking forward to that blooming. Also earlier in the year, the commission made recommendations to the council for some cleanup amendments. Seems like we do quite a little bit of that to the form-based code. And it's my understanding from staff that those amendments are currently being considered by the city council. We're currently studying the implementation of the Housing Action Toolkit, as it's called. We have 7 action items that we're discussing that include raising the SEPA exemption levels for minor construction, allowing administrative approval of final plats, and raising short plats from 4 to 9 units. SEPA being the State Environmental Protection Act, just as a reminder. The Planning Commission has been reviewing the city's current regulations for accessory dwelling units, ADUs as they're called. And we've discussed a whole variety of code amendments aimed at removing barriers to ADU development within the city. While we don't believe that there will be a huge demand for this, we're cognizant of the need for diversity of housing and increasing the number of opportunities for housing for our residents. Many of the amendments were recommended to the city's recently adopted Housing Action Toolkit. Now this rest of this fall, what's left of it, and winter, the Planning Commission will be reviewing what the consultant that was hired by the city for the Northeast Business District Plan has started working on. And that was a recommendation that the Planning Commission was very much behind, was trying to get the city to get a consultant behind that to develop something. And already we're cognizant that next year we'll be kicking off the 2024 Comprehensive Plan update. So I suspect that will be number 1 on our work plan for next year. Now, the things that I've mentioned so far tonight, especially the Housing Action Toolkit, were in addressing an earlier question that was raised with the Economic Development member. Those were our work plan activities that I've mentioned, but with emphasis on the toolkit and the form-based code cleanup. We're very cognizant at the Planning Commission that we are to be keeping in mind the livability of our community, but also keeping in mind the need for diversity of housing and business, the goals that have been set for us in population growth, and the dire need for economic growth. I say dire because it is very, very important to the economic future of the community. So we're doing fine, but we can always use more business. That's my report for this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, Mr. Graybill, Chair Graybill, thank you. Appreciate your review and all the hard work with that council. Do we have any questions right offhand? I think you've covered things very nicely for us, and I appreciate your key components as you spoke of them, the Housing Action Toolkit, something we're all eager to get underway, and I know you're getting close, and we're going to be able to pick that up soon. And then in addition to some of the cleanup associated with the form-based code, with these new large pieces of zoning change that we're becoming accustomed to, there's inevitably a few things that need to be some fine-tuning, and I'm glad we were able to get to those things relatively quickly. So thank you for the good work and hard work with that.
We look forward to passing more recommendations and work on to you in the future.
All right. Keep it all flowing. Keep us both busy. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa has a comment or a question. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Chair Graybill, when you talked about the ADUs, other housing elements, as well as the toolkit, did the commission review or has been updated and briefed on the SHAPE organization and where they're heading with housing? was that given a consideration? What information they have and how they can be a resource, and whether we lined up with what SHAPE is or is not doing?
The staff seems to think that we are well in line with what they are doing and keeps us informed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, very good. And Councilmember McCluskey, there is your mic.
All right, thank you. Just so the council is aware, we do have a city staff member that is on the administrative side of SHAPE. And so they do the report back. I just do the report back to you guys. And we are working on our next year's agenda and setting that up with our work plan, which you guys have reviewed once or twice, and another finalization of some of the state legislative priorities the SHAPE will be trying to spearhead, working with AWCs. So that's where they're at. So there's not really any direct objectives for actionable items yet, but we're getting there.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Anything else? I'm not seeing any. Well, again, Chair Graybill, thank you for joining us this evening, and I look forward to hearing your future report, and you keep the work flowing, as we said. So,
thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
all right. Take care. Bye for now. With that, we will move on to our next item, which will be the proposed 2023-2024 biennial budget, and turning to Leslie Bladesdale to help us with considering.
Mayor, I'll just make a few comments before
Excuse me,
we
yes.
bring Leslie on, but I just wanted to comment to the council that it's my pleasure to present the 2023-2024 City of University Place proposed biennial budget. As reflected in the 2020 census, the city continues to grow. Over the past 5 years, the city has grown by almost 8%, from 32,820 to 35,420. While we celebrate the city's growth and its reputation as a desirable community, it is clear that our country is once again faced with significant uncertainty. This budget recognizes that rising interest rates will likely result in a slowing economy, while record high inflation has significant effects on the expenses of the city and its residents. As a result, this budget is a status quo budget that is continuing the city's policy of careful, conservative revenue and expenditure assumptions. Tonight, we will focus on the base budget, particularly revenues. At the next budget study session on October 17th, we will focus on council goals. So before turning it over to Leslie, I will end with what I believe is the most important statement that I can make tonight. Due to the continuation of our history of conservative budgeting, in particular focus on the long-term financial health of the city, our long-range forecast projects that the city will continue to have enough resources to maintain existing service levels and to meet all its statutory and contractual obligations through the budget and forecasted period. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie and have her walk you through the elements of the budget tonight, especially the revenues.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sack.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director, and included in your packet is a budget memo, as well as the 146-page proposed biennial budget document. The process for the budget began in July with departments preparing their budget requests. And then in the end of August, we had meetings where the city manager reviewed all those requests. And once everything was nailed down, it turned to me and I get to compile it into 146 pages for your reading pleasure. The city manager's proposed budget maintains existing service levels with a focus on long-range financial planning and budgetary sustainability. And there were very few changes to the base budget. It is responsive to council's request for staff's preliminary analysis on budgetary impacts of council goals. What we've done is the 1.1 million in one-time monies that is appropriated in the budget as a line item. And then once council decides how to utilize those funds, when we get deeper into the discussions of council goals, we can then move that to the appropriate line items, but it is built into the budget. So we can go to the next slide. Just wanted to remind you of our budget calendar. So on October 17th, we'll have our first public hearing and our second study session where we'll focus on the council goals, property tax levy, community grants, and we'll also have our first property tax study session. On November 7th, we'll have our second public hearing and third study session where the focus will be on capital improvement programs and any final budget changes. With our plan to have our third public hearing and as well as our property tax public hearing on November 24th or November 21st. And that will be the night we have final consideration of the budget and the property tax levy. I wanted to give a quick overview for you as a refresher because this only comes around every 2 years. The budget document, 146 pages, is organized into 7 sections to help the reader find information about the city. It's a lot of the same numbers, just presented in a different way. The first section is the budget message, which is written by the city manager. Then there's the budget guide, which is the budget process, budget guidelines, and our basis of accounting. And then we move to the executive summary. This section provides an overview of the city's financial condition. This is all of the monies and all of the expenses for all of the funds in one place. Then we move to the operating budget. This is the expenditure budgets by department. It includes the mission and responsibilities, goals and major objectives, personnel numbers, any highlights and changes for that department, and a multi-year expenditure comparison. The next section is the capital budget. The capital budget provides an overview of our CIP plans, and we'll get into that in more detail in one of our future study sessions. Probably my favorite section of the budget, if you're allowed to have a favorite section of the budget, is the budget by fund. This breaks down each fund, and it's the one-stop shopping for seeing which revenues go into which fund and what those pay for. And then the last section is the appendix, which has the miscellaneous statistical information, historical tax rates, information on sales tax and property tax, our debt service information, salary ranges, information on the commissions, and then a glossary of the budget terms and acronyms. So the operations budget is at core service levels, and our staffing is at 2022 levels with no new positions added in the biennium. The capital improvement program is also at core levels using city dollars to leverage grants, and our debt payments are in accordance with the city's debt schedule. Next slide.
And Leslie, while we're switching slides, do you have a particular page you're on at this point?
I am just kind of giving the overview. I'm not going to a specific page at this time, but we will get there. Just giving you an overview of what's included in the document.
Great. Thank you. Please continue.
So our revenues are slightly reduced revenue projections given the state of the economy, particularly in sales tax and REIT. Our expenditure projections reflect inflationary environment for contract services and employee salaries and benefits, and a very limited number of new item requests, primarily one-time expenses. And then, as I mentioned before, we have appropriated the 1.1 million in one-time funds available for council goals. Next slide.
I'm sorry. We do have a question from Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, I thought we were going to add 2 staff to our 2023-2024 budgetary projections with the Public Works and Parks. Council
That is part of the new item requests that council will be discussing at the next study session as part of the council goals.
Right, but that's not going to be included into the proposed summary?
It's currently not included in this budget, but is part of any changes we make before final adoption, should council choose to do so.
Okay, And then if the police levy passes?
If the police levy passes, the budget will be adjusted for that. Currently, when we have our first study session on property tax, we'll be studying just based on the 1% like normal. And then by the time we come to our second meeting, we should have an idea of what happens with the levy, and we'll be able to discuss and approve what's really going to happen based on the levy results.
Right, and that'll be for the final vote on the
Correct.
November 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So if we can go to the next slide. So the council goals, those will be discussed in more detail at our next meeting. Council had asked staff to identify impacts of strategies to achieve the goals. Staff has identified those and come up with strategies with unfunded ongoing costs strategies, and then those with unfunded ongoing costs may require new revenues. The strategies will be developed, discussed, and refined during study sessions in 2023 also. Next slide. So this slide is taken from, and I'm not sure if you guys are looking at the budget document in the packet. If it's in the packet, it's page 61 of the packet. It's actually page 38 of the budget document. This is part of the executive summary, and it gives us all of the revenues that are included in the budget. The operating revenues, those are the revenues we can count on: property tax, sales tax, franchise fees, utility tax, the things that come in year after year. And then on the next slide, it is what we call the other financing sources. These are the things that don't continue on, or numbers that we don't really know what they'll be. For instance, any land sales, any operating grants. And so those are considered other financing sources. And like I said, that all of that is compiled in the document in the executive summary, page 38 of the budget, page 61 of the packet tonight. We go to the next slide, we'll get into some of the details on those revenues.
Leslie,
Our tax revenues, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are having a difficult time. I don't think our page numbers are matching up with where you are, and the type on the screen is a little hard for these eyes to see. So were you saying 61 or 38?
It's as part of the budget document, it is page 38, but I believe in the packet materials, it is page 61 because of all the agenda and everything before that. It is the executive summary section, the sources and uses chart.
Okay, I think we have some suggestion is on page 38. 38. Okay, very good. Thank you for letting us in. Yep.
You bet.
Please continue.
So again, this is all of the revenues that are in the budget for all funds. It includes property tax, sales tax, our criminal justice taxes, utility taxes.
Sorry, Leslie, one more opportunity to see if we can get this figured out. Councilmember Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Chair. Leslie, if you can slow down again, please. You're going really fast. These are important numbers. Can you please wait until we agree that we're on the same page as you are before you move on, in order for us, at least for me, to be on the same page you are? Please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So are we on 38 for the most part?
She moved on. I don't know where she is.
Okay. I'm not sure we're seeing on the screen 38.
30. Amanda, if you can go back 2 slides, that starts page 38. Here we go. So it's the operating revenues under the sources and uses on page 38 of the budget document.
Thank you. Yes, top of 38 is operating revenue sources and uses. Good. All right.
Okay. So everyone else there?
Are we good there? Looks that way.
Okay. So again, this is the operating revenues are the things we can count on: franchise fees, utility tax, property tax, sales tax. You can see when we look at property tax, I built that with just the 1%, not the levy. We won't make any changes to that until we know what happens with the levy. Our sales tax, we are projecting for our revenue numbers a downturn. We've had 2 very high years of sales tax due to online sales and our large construction projects, but with the economy looking to slow, we are bringing those numbers back down to more of an average historical rate till we see what happens with that. Additionally, let's see, utility taxes, we do project a decrease in utility taxes because we are still seeing a decline with our cellular and telephone, and we're starting to see a bit of a decline with cable taxes and franchise fees as people are cutting the cord on their cable and starting to use streaming services. Real estate excise tax, we're also projecting a downturn as the real estate market slows. The one nice thing with that one is we do not appropriate those monies until we have them in hand. So anything that's in this budget that's utilizing REIT, that is money that we already have in the bank. So I wanted to go into some more detail. This is a separate chart that's not in the budget document that just gives you a bit more detail of the various revenues. So if we can go down 2 slides, Amanda, back to that revenue page. It is included in your memo, but this just breaks down the tax revenues, that the tax revenues are expected to decrease from our 2022 estimates. And we continue to be conservative with our revenue projections. Utility taxes, as I said, we're projecting a decrease. Leasehold excise tax to stay pretty flat. Gambling tax, that way is one that we tend to see increase during slower economic times. I do have a decrease of about $10,000 from what we received this year just to be safe. Again, the decrease in our real estate excise tax. Fuel tax, we're starting to see that one come back as people are getting back to the office and getting out and about more. So, and the fuel tax numbers we get from MRSC, there's a calculator that we can use to project those state shared revenues. If we go to the next slide, is our fees and charges. Our franchise fees, again, I'm projecting a decrease. We're starting to see a decrease in the cable, and so we want to make sure we account for that should we see it decrease more. Our TBD fees, I'm projecting a slight increase. We've had a lot of new apartments built, and all of those residents come with vehicles, so we are expecting a slight increase in TBD fees. Business license fees are staying fairly flat. Alarm permit fees are also staying fairly flat. Our development service fees, this is the revenue source that takes the most work, and I can't take any credit for that. Kevin Brisky and his staff do a fantastic job of trying to project these fees. They contact all of the builders and developers in the area with projects to find out what's happening, how quickly will they be taking down lots and building single family residences, and try to come up with a good estimate of what we can prepare for in the coming biennium. It's not an exact science, but they put an awful lot of work and come pretty darn close every year. The next slide is our utility taxes. Gas, we do this one on a historical average because gas, this is natural gas, is weather dependent. If we have colder winters, we see more. And so strictly just budgeting for a certain percent increase doesn't tend to work. So I take the last 3 years and do the average, and that gets us pretty close. Solid waste, we're projecting an increase as new homes are built. More people have a refuse bill, so that one goes up. Cable, we're projecting a decrease, as well as telephone and cellular. Electric and water are additionally are similar to natural gas. They are a bit weather dependent, so we do a 3-year historical average to come up with our projections. And storm drainage, we're projecting it to increase slightly because that one is tied to property taxes. And so the 1% increase, we would see a bit of an increase on that. The next slide is we're down to questions. So does anyone have any questions on any specific revenues and any other questions on revenues, as that is our preliminary focus this evening? And if we have more time, we can certainly delve into other areas.
So questions about revenues, and Councilmember Woods is first up.
So looking at your previous slide to the last one you were showing when you mentioned development services fees, I was going back to the sources and uses section of the fine, and I'm not seeing development services fees listed here unless they're under a different name. I was wondering if you could clarify that for me.
It's the building, planning, engineering, and fire fees.
Got it, thank you.
On the sources and uses, yes.
Okay, thank you, that helps.
Other questions? Though we'll have some opportunity to talk more about this in the future, but this is a good chance to get some questions out. And anyone else offhand? As we get things introduced tonight, we look at our revenues. And overall, we can see that we have a slight downward trend as we're anticipating the economy slowing and cooling a bit. Though it is not a fall off the cliff moment, it is just a cooling from what I can see in those projections. So, Councilmember Keel.
Okay, great, thank you, Mayor. Leslie, thank you for your report. I'm just, last few days taking these numbers in, and I've got a lot of questions, but not on the topics tonight. So I just want to take this in and turn it over a bit. My questions and my interest is going to be on the follow-on meetings that we're going to have where we talk about expenditures and funds and your favorite part of your favorite section of the budget. That last piece. That's where a lot of my questions are going to be. And the other thing in particular that I want to know at some point in time in this process is, early on when 12 years ago, whatever it is, when I first came on council, we talked a lot about, and this was even before Town Center was built. When I came on, we talked a lot about reducing our debt and those kinds of things. And so I just want to, I'm interested in kind of raising that conversation again, just talking in particular, really, where are we? I know, again, going back a few years, we did a lot of things around refinancing bonds and lowering interest rates, and we took some advantages of some windfalls, opportunities that kind of came along that. And so my interest is, are there other things like that now, given, where the economy is heading, slowing down? There's a lot of other things and other tools that could be available to us. And so I'm curious to know, are there other things out there today? Are we looking at them? Are we still having our eye on the ball of trying to find big chunks and big opportunities to lower the debt?
Yes, and that is something we're always looking at. At the time we did the refinance, most recently, those were the only bonds that could be refinanced based on the structure of the bonds. We currently have 5 open bonds right now, and I believe at the end of this year, it will be $39 million is what we have in outstanding bond debt. At last check, there isn't anything eligible for any refinance, but we are always watching that. You'll know, I believe last year we took some of those one-time monies and paid off the Public Works Trust Fund loans, which could be paid off early. So we got that debt off the books, but it's something we're always monitoring and always looking for.
Okay, great, thank you. I look forward to a more detailed conversation about that as we go forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Fleming, you're next up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Leslie, you always have a way to take a whole bunch of numbers and make it all interesting in the conversation, so thank you for that. You know, just listening to your presentation tonight, and as we're starting to put the puzzles of the 23-24 budget together, with the anticipated decrease in the revenues, looking ahead, do you anticipate any kind of adverse or potential adverse impact on city operations over the next 24 months?
I do not. Right now, we've kept our expenditures low. As part of this budget process, departments did not add a lot of things. We've kept things pretty much at a status quo basis, just maintaining the direction we're going without adding a lot of expenditure budgets in anticipation of this. There were not a lot of new item requests that weren't related to the council goals. And so staff did a really good job of doing some good budgeting and not just adding fluff to their budget where it wasn't needed. It's everything that's in there is for things that we're currently doing, status quo, just keeping the ship moving.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. And Mayor Pro Tem, not quite yet, almost. Okay. Wrong. Mayor Pro Tem, I did get you on. All right.
Thank you, Mayor, and I know the feeling. Leslie, the 5 bonds equaling to $39 million, are they all councilmanic bonds?
Yes.
Okay, so just for the public and for this council, but I think this council knows, but for the public, because when people hear 39 million, they say, where the heck did that debt come from? Well, the councilmanic bonds equaling to that, and actually was more. We've done a great job reducing that from 55 million down to 39 million, but that was done prior to 2010 and before this council. And what this council has focused on has reducing debt, increasing our reserves, and bringing backup services. So I just want to put that for the record. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Certainly. Any other comments, questions at this point? I'm not seeing any, and indeed. And Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate you mentioning that, and Councilmember Keel as well, in terms of the history here with our work to reduce debt. That's in excess of, that's right around a 25% reduction in the time in the last approximately 12 years. Significant effort. So, and we're now getting things rebalanced as well. The work is never quite done, but we've made some progress, and it's a chance to see that. And with our budget coming forward with the city manager's budget, Mr. Sugg, thank you for getting this prepared for us and your staff and putting it together as well. So.
Welcome. Yes, thank you to Leslie and her team for all the work that she did in putting up these almost 150
That's very
pages.
good. We're through the first part of this, and we'll be, remind me again, Leslie, when are we going to public hearing, just so the public can be ready to comment?
Our first public hearing is on October 17th.
Okay.
So at our next meeting.
Next regular meeting.
And for the benefit of the public, the full budget document is on the website on the finance page. So it is accessible there if anyone wants to see it and review it. And if council, as you go through the document, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions in the interim.
Very good. Well, thank you, Leslie, and thanks to the staff. We'll look forward to getting on the other side of the ledger sheet in the future here and talking about expenses as well. I think, though, we're ready to move on to our next item, item 10. Is that great? And that would take us to VEBA and various health accounts. And Lisa Parterick is going to help us with that.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Lisa Parterick, Administrative Services Director. Thank you for letting me present on HRA VEBA. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can move through the slides. Let's see. Are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation up on the screen?
We can, yes.
Okay, wonderful. So this evening, I wanted to provide a little bit of a background on a particular benefit that's provided to staff through Mission Square, formerly known as ICMA RC. It's a retirement health savings account. I want to also talk a little bit about a potential new product, a health reimbursement account that we are looking at potentially introducing for staff to replace the Mission Square retirement health savings account. So I'm going to talk about the differences between the two, talk about our one-time funding request, should council be interested in moving forward with that, some comparisons, and time frame moving forward. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about, let's see here, it's not moving forward. There we go. The retirement health savings account, what it is, it's through Mission Square, again, formerly ICMA-RC. Mission Square is in charge of our most of our retirement accounts, our 401s, our 457s. We also have Roth through them, and this vehicle, which is a retirement health savings account. It was made available within the city in 2002. Back in 2002, individuals could choose to voluntarily put money into this account to be saved for healthcare, qualified healthcare expenses in their retirement. So when I say qualified healthcare expenses, I'm talking about things like co-pays for insurance, out-of-pocket expenses. There's some over-counter items. Another qualified healthcare expense is related to the long-term health insurance, or I'm sorry, long-term care insurance. That was a hot topic last year when Washington State passed that requirement for employees.
Say, Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mayor Pro Tem has a question, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, sorry to interrupt you, but it's really important in how I listen to you, what is the purpose of this? Is this for a resolution from the council, an ordinance, an amendment to something? What is it that you're looking forward for this council to do with this information?
Ultimately, there's two things. One is if staff, and it's looking like they are interested in introducing this benefit, we would like to have a master agreement signed. So we would need council approval to add this as a benefit and allow the city manager to authorize the contracts as necessary to get this plan in place.
Thank you.
There is secondarily a new item request for one-time funding, which would be in consideration with the budget should council choose to move in that direction. Okay.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question, Mayor Pro Tem.
Please proceed.
Okay, so okay, thank you. So moving forward, essentially, the process for this current plan that's in place is you are able to access these employee paid funds. So again, this is fully employee funded. There are no employer dollars going into this account. They're accessible to staff after separation from service with the city or at retirement. So that's one main difference with this plan. The other difference is the only folks that could access this plan if something happened to the employee would be a spouse or dependent child. It's not portable. So if an employee leaves service here and goes to another organization, they can't take it with them and roll it over. It stays with the City of University Place and they can access it at a later date. And then, of course, when they're ready to use those funds, they can seek reimbursement forms from Mission Square to reimburse their funds. So with that, that's the current program that we have in place. The reason why we actually are looking at a different product was we were alerted this summer that the way that we had initially set up the contribution limits was on a percentage basis of salary. That's no longer allowed. It must be uniform contribution across the entire organization. So with that being said, we looked at, because we know we're going to have to change the contribution limits, we looked at to see if there are other products available that are similar that might provide a better benefit for staff. And that's where HRA VIBA comes in. So HRA VIBA is essentially similar to a retirement health savings account, but it is a a program that staff can access while still employed. So if they're putting funds into the account and they have medical needs now that are out of pocket, they actually have a way to access those funds without having to leave service or retire. The other major difference between an HRE VIBA and the plan that we currently have in place is it may include beneficiaries outside of the spouse and child. So maybe there's an employee that isn't married and doesn't have children, but they want to provide this benefit to someone else, a close friend or someone like that. They're able to do that because it's their funds. This is also a portable program. So there's many other public agencies in Washington State that have an HRE VIBA account. So if they happen to land at one of those agencies, they can take their fund individually and roll it over. There's also multiple ways to get reimbursement. So there's a reimbursable app that they can have on their phone. There's also a card that they can use. So there's a couple more ways to get access to their funds than what's currently offered under our current product. We did conduct a survey just to gauge the interest of staff interested in moving from the Mission Square product to an HRE VIBA, and a majority of staff was interested in making the change. There's a multitude of ways that these funds can be contributed to. Most of the reimbursements, or I'm sorry, the contributions that we found have been employer funded, and we looked at some of the agencies in Washington State that have HRE VIBA include Tacoma, the Port of Tacoma, Pierce County, West Pierce Fire, Gig Harbor. We also looked at AWC cities that participate in HRE VIBA. These were the varying contribution amounts that we found by the employer. Largely, we're recommending that HRE VIBAs continue to be employee funded. However, the fact that we will have to lower contributions to meet the uniformity requirement by the IRS means that our contribution limit will probably go from a couple $100 a month or to something closer to around $35 to $40 a month. So it will take a longer period of time to build up those accounts so that they may be utilized in a meaningful way. So the new item request, should council consider it, would be a one-time financial impact of $1,000 per each current employee. That would be prorated for part-time employees. You can see the one-time request would be $51,000 approximately. This would be available to employees in good standing and who are employed as of December 31st and who will be employed into the new year. Installments could be made of $250 per month per each employee over the first 4 months of 2023. After that time, all city contributions would cease and it would become a fully funded employee contribution at that time. But again, the one-time initial investment is just to help speed up the process where this could be a benefit that could be utilized in a meaningful way much quicker than it could just by employees contributing on their own. Next steps would involve a final survey to staff to determine if this is something that they really are interested in moving towards and stopping Mission Square and moving to an HRE VIBA, regardless of council's interest in contributing or not. We understand that there are other financial considerations that are on the horizon, and Leslie will be providing those in the upcoming budget sessions that you're having. So we understand that this is not a light request. And there might be other enumerations that council may consider. So anyways, we'll put out one final survey just to make sure that this is the direction that staff want us to go. There'll be a period of time for comments. So after the survey, staff can provide any final thoughts, concerns, considerations that they want us to know before we move to this plan. And the goal is to have a final decision by staff whether they want to stop Mission Square Retirement Health Savings and move to an HRE VIBA sometime later this fall, because it will be during our open enrollment period. We'd like to have a contract in place, a master agreement signed if that's the wishes of staff, so that we can have accounts and everything set up by the first of the year, so contributions can be made as seamlessly as possible.
Good.
So with that, I wanted to provide an opportunity for any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you. Before we go to Councilmember Fleming, I had a question. So is it an either-or proposition? It's either we continue with what I have to think of, I guess it's Mission Square. I have to think of it as a ICMA RC because of my history, but well, it's either that or we, alternatively to this, we can't, staff wouldn't have both choices.
Yeah, given the dollar amounts, we want to be sensitive to staff. So we would most likely stop the Mission Square and contribute solely to HRA VIVA. So there would be only one contribution to one health reimbursement vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lisa, I was tracking with you, and then suddenly I lost you in the presentation, so I'm looking for some clarification. The first part, and this is kind of going back to Leslie's presentation when she talked about being budget neutral for the most part this year and trying to kind of pull in the reins because we're looking for a downturn in the economy. In your presentation, you began with saying the beauty of this program is that it is all employee funded and there's no city funding. And then at the end of the presentation, I thought I heard you saying there's going to be a city contribution to this. So which is it, if you could clarify that? And
Sure. So the Mission Square has historically been employee funded. That's what we currently have in place. For HRA VIVA, we're proposing that, you know, in the long term, it continue to be employee funded, but for a one-time initial funding just to get the fund started. So that's where that number is coming from. And you're correct, this would be a new item request.
so with that in mind, is it possible to roll funds forward from one account to the other? And B, if I was an employee and I started just putting my own money in there, would that not suffice to fund that?
Yeah, so the ICMA Mission Square funds are not portable, so we can't roll it. And yes, you're correct. When employees start funding, it would eventually have enough in there to fund, but we're probably looking at approximately $40 a month to fund. So it'll take some time before there's a meaningful amount where staff can use those funds for medical reimbursement purposes.
All right, I just need to process that one. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Keel, you're next up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. To just piggyback on what Councilmember Fleming, because I have exact same question. You answered some of it. So given what you just said, it sounds like that because there's not going to be any money in the new account VIVA, that the city would pay the $51,000 to kind of get it to a meaningful level, to use your words, right? And then if an employee needed to use it, then because the city contributed up front, then they can use it. Okay, they've got some money there to go forward with it because we're paying the $51,000 based on the FTE that we have. So, and this is a question. So that's what I'm gleaning, right? And so then, in addition to that, you were saying that they would pay $30-something a month for the employee piece, but then you also threw up a graph that said they would pay $250. And so, I'm guessing that payment is to pay back the city, or what is that?
No, so are you talking about this graph?
Yes, that graphic.
Okay, so these are some examples of what we found other cities that have the HRA VIVA. This is the employer contribution. So these cities don't have employee contributions, it's employer contributions. What we're saying is, in the long run, we don't want to have an ongoing employer contribution, right? So for example, like the city of Sumner, you know, they pay $250 a month.
The employer does, per employee.
Per employee, right. So we are saying that just to get the account started, each employee would get $1,000. We would space it out over 4 months. So each month, $250 from the city would go to the employee account. After that, $1,000 is in the employee account, all city contribution stops. There's no further city contribution. The employee contribution then would be what continues on.
Okay, great. So then some other follow-on questions, if Mayor, if I could. So then, given that, is that a salary bump for the employee because it's theirs, and does it go onto their W-2, and do they have to collect tax and report it that way?
This is a untaxed vehicle, so it's tax-free.
Okay. All right. And so then the money that's in the Mission Square, it's not portable, but if I was an employee that's been here for 20 years, I've been paying to that thing for that amount of time, and I got money in there. So when I go to this VIBA, what happens to my Mission? Do I still have access to it because I'm still an employee here, and I can still pull from that, or what?
You can't pull from, no employees can pull from a Mission Square Retirement Health Savings account until they leave service with the city.
So when I leave service from the city, that money in Mission is still there, accessible to me?
Okay, when you leave, yes.
Even if I took another job?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lukuski is next. I'm going to interject something quickly, if I could. I'll try to make this quick. So sometimes, it's been my experience at least, sometimes VIBA will be used as a way to offset a change in medical plans in order to move to a higher deductible, and using VIBA to backfill that. And so some of those numbers we saw on a chart might be related to a bargained change in a health medical insurance. And so it's sort of apples and oranges. You know, this isn't a bargained item yet, at least to my knowledge. And some of those other numbers might have been through a bargaining process. So just want to throw that out there. Councilmember McCluskey.
Yeah, that's an important point. How did you arrive at the $40 a month as the stipend to go into the account?
So that is the lowest salary amount at what a 1.5% contribution rate, which is the lowest amount that's currently contributed under Mission Square Retirement Health Savings account.
Right.
And so everyone would be moving to that lowest dollar amount.
Right, okay. And so they'll have money in the Mission account. And in closing that off, will they get cashed out? So what happens to the funds in that account?
It stays in that account until they separate from service.
Okay, and then they can have access to it?
Correct.
Right, okay. So under the terms of that, how that account was set up, that account's not going to be a wash. Okay. So the $1,000 one-time contribution per employee, why did you just set it at the current employee instead of newly hired employees after they've have been vested?
It's only for current employees, so new employees wouldn't be eligible for the contribution.
Right.
If city were to move forward with the contribution.
Yeah.
New employees, if we move forward with an HRA VIBA, new employees would contribute at the same rate that all the other employees are. They would be ineligible for the city contribution.
And from what you were saying, the $1,000 is just so that they'll have something significant in there to use.
Correct.
That's it, right? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. The way I look at it, is a added benefit, an added bonus that we're talking about here, essentially, to the current. That's what, to me, what it smells like and looks like to me. So with that, I know you mentioned monthly payments for 4 months, but why not just a one-time payment of $1,000 and get rid of the paperwork, and not deal with 4 payments?
We can do that as well. If council choose to move forward, it can be done that way as well.
Well, is there a cost to doing monthly payments? I mean, obviously there's time and staff work and whatever else, data entry, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to say if we go in that direction, I would suggest that we look at a one-time payment and just get, that and save us some money as a city from all that, or at least staff time at a minimum. The other one is, Lisa, is when you say when they leave UP, they have access to that health fund. Is it a one-time payment? They say, okay, I left the city, I need that money now, or do they just are accessible to that for medical reasons? For what purposes are they, and how will they be able to access the funds?
So if you're talking about the Mission Square Retirement Health
Yes.
Savings, once they leave service with the city, they have to use that money only for a qualified health expense, and it's reimbursable only. So you can't necessarily get front-loaded cash to spend any way you want. So there's a couple caveats to that. There's one being where, say you were retired and you knew that your Medicare, you had a secondary insurance that went with Medicare. You can have it set up where if you knew what that monthly insurance rate was going to be, you could have that directly deposited in your account once a month. Or if you had a long-term care insurance plan and you had those regular payments and you knew what those were going to be up front, because usually you can pay those, twice a year, quarterly or monthly, you can set that up as a direct deposit. But outside of those types of things, everything else has to be like on a reimbursable basis. So you have to provide proof, receipts, doctor billing information to them with a form requesting reimbursement for those services and that cost.
Okay, so my last question is, if the council decided to go in that direction, since this is more, I highlighted bonus for a particular reason, because I believe HARPA funds allows for bonus for retention purposes. Can this HARPA funds, because we still have a few dollars, quite a few dollars to make decision on, can the HARPA fund be utilized for this bonus?
That's a great question, Mayor Pro Tem. I do not know the answer to that, so I would have to do research on that.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Okay, you said it was the last question, so I was just wanted to make.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify on who would be eligible or not eligible, if I'm an employee who gets hired on December 15th, 2022, I'd be eligible for $1,000, and if I get hired on January 15th, 2023, I am not.
We would say you probably would have to be employed for the full year, right? And employed as of December 31st, 2022. So you can't just be hired on, December 15th and get that. We would make a caveat regarding that.
Okay, and if we do that, how many employees would that affect as far as not being eligible for the benefit? How many did we hire in the last year, roughly?
We hired 3.
3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of those hires were April. So, we could modify it and say, okay, if you were hired by this particular date, say it's, May 1st or something, or April 1st, and you've been employed the rest of that time, or we could prorate it. There's a couple different ways to do this.
Okay, and a second question, you'd mentioned employees voting on this. When they voted the first time and before they vote the second time, are they doing it with an understanding of a potential $1,000 influx from the council, or is it just straight up looking at the program?
No, it's straight up looking at the program. We didn't want to inflect that this would, that council was providing anything because we hadn't asked for council. It's a new item request. So as we've gone through this educational purpose, it's been a straight program to program comparison. Do you like the old benefit? Do you like the new benefit? Do you want to change?
Okay. And then finally, just, you brought up the other cities and how they're doing, city contributions to these funds, and as was pointed out, that could be a bargained thing for various reasons. But I am curious is, since this would be at least for a one-time benefit, how competitive is the city right now with benefits package compared to cities of similar size in general, and would this significantly influence this one way or the other?
I would say we're on par with our benefits with most of our comparator cities. We because we're an AWC city, most of us carry the same types of benefits, have the same benefit type of structure. So I couldn't say that this really, I would just like to say that we're on par. We feel like we're competitive, we're in the market, and we are equivalent to a lot of other cities out there.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes my questions, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Wood. Before I go to Councilmember Fleming, coming up for a second round of comments, so I guess I'm going to take a bite of the apple too. And my second pass would be, Leslie, $1,000. Why 1,000 versus 1,200 versus 800? Or at least, I'm sorry, but.
Sure. So we felt that $1,000, given some of the medical expenses that folks might be experiencing, it is sort of a common dollar amount that folks would feel that they could pay for certain medical expenses. We didn't necessarily want to go higher than that. Of course, we looked at other dollar figures. We looked at lesser amounts as well. But we felt that 1,000 was something that folks would be able to use for a multitude of purposes if council were amenable to that. Starting in 2024, they could access that for a multitude of different things.
All right, very good, thank you. And Councilmember Fleming, your second bite of the apple.
Yeah, my second bite. I'll take a big one here this time.
All right.
So Lisa, just so I understand all this stuff, the HRA is really kind of the modern version of the HSA?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. I just need to kind of get a picture in my head of what I'm looking at here. On this $40 contribution, is that a cap, or could an employee add more to it other than the $40?
No, for the most part, no, because the IRS requires a uniformity because they don't want, they want all employees to have sort of the same tax benefits and tax advantages. So they don't want one employee able to put more money in than another. And so we want to be sensitive to employees and their salaries. So that's why we're looking at the $40. One caveat to that could be, we could set up a group that's for employees that are 55 and older, and they might be able to contribute a higher amount, but again, that would have to be uniform across the entire group. So it would be $40 for all staff. If there was a 55 and older group, then maybe they could contribute an extra, $40 or an extra $50, something like that.
Okay. And then lastly, why would we want to exclude employees that we hire in 23, 24? What would be the advantage of doing that, or the rationale?
I think that would.
I mean, if we're talking equity across the board, why would we discriminate?
Well, it would be a program that they haven't experienced with us before, and we've had a program in place that we're switching. It wouldn't be much more expensive given the potential hiring that we would be looking at in 23 and 24. Given Leslie's presentation, there's no new staff added. There are some new staff requests, so you could be looking at 2 to 4 new individuals if they come on. There potentially could be replacement hires. Again, those may be fairly low, folks leaving and then us hiring back on. So it probably wouldn't have a large budgetary impact at all if council wanted to do that. And so we could do that for the 23-24 budget.
For what it's worth, I think if we're doing it for one, we should do it for all. I'll just kind of put that out there. And I do believe the impact for what the request is here is absolutely negligible in the big picture. So if I'm wrong, just correct me on that.
You're not wrong, council member.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That brings us to Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. When you say may change plans, you said that in one of your breaths. You said the employee may be able to change, may change plans. May sounds like they had a choice. I didn't believe that they have a choice. Once this gets enacted, or actually at one point, whether we have this new plan or not, if we don't have it and we don't approve it, that other health plan just goes away. They won't be able to use it except when they leave, correct?
Right, so
Okay, I just want to, that's okay. It's just a black and white answer. So they don't have a choice. They either join this if they wanted to have a health plan, or they won't have not a health plan, but what is it called?
it's a reimbursable account. So
Reimbursable
their
account.
choice- correct. Their choice is to either move to this HRA VIBA and get rid of Mission Square, which a majority of staff has expressed interest in doing, or we just stick with Mission Square and continue on, and we don't do HRA VIBA. We won't have both. We won't have both plans. It'll be one or the other.
I
and
thought
staff
that-
has expressed a desire for VIBA.
I thought Mission Square was, or that particular product was going away and wouldn't be available, except for the money will stay there and they will be having access to it once they leave UP. You're saying that we can keep that Mission Square. Whose decision is that? The council or the employees?
It's the employee's
Okay.
decision, and after the first survey, they've expressed interest in moving to HRE VIBA so they can have access to funds now and not going with Mission Square anymore.
Well, when you say funds now, you mean the council funds that we would contribute?
Or their own funds.
Right,
'Cause
but
right now-
but those funds would be, so why would they want to, this is where I'm lost. Why would they want to move to forget about the council funds contribution. Why would they want to move to an account where they can put funds when they can do that already?
Because they don't have access to their funds while still employed. So they have to wait until they leave service with the city to get any of those reimbursable funds. If they move to a VIBA plan and say it's only an employer contribution, they can access those funds while still employed.
So
they don't have to leave.
that's-
So if they have braces to pay for,
Okay, so-
they can access those funds now.
So, okay, so that's the part I missed. The product in hand with Mission Square is they put money, our employees have been putting money in there knowingly that they can't utilize that until they leave UP.
Correct.
Okay, that's the part I missed, and that is very helpful. Okay, so they already knew that already. It's not like they're leaving a product that's being taken away from them and so forth. Okay, so that kind of changes quite a bit. So with that, just bear with me, Mayor. Excuse me a second.
Sure.
Again, my understanding is this is just reimbursable medical expenses that isn't covered by the medical plan, the benefit that we give them. We pay a very good penny. I think we pay 90% of the medical plan.
For dependents, yes, we do. 90% for spouses and dependents.
And the employee?
100% for
So
employees.
it's 100%, 90% for everybody else. I don't know. I mean, even for employee, and that's where our focus is, to the most part, is 100%. So there may be medical expenses that the plan doesn't cover, but my understanding, this plan is a pretty good plan that covers quite a bit, a variety of things. So and I know this could cover potential child care or whatever, right? Could it cover other things or?
Flexible spending accounts might be what you're thinking
Oh,
of.
okay,
Those
so-
can cover daycare. That's a separate.
This is
that's a
different,
separate
okay.
item.
So if it's just for medical, which I understand now, health, I'm talking to my peers here, and that is, you got a 100% covered employee with a very good medical plan and 90%. So again, I'm going to have a really hard time biting into the apple here of proposing. The only reason this not for the purpose of providing medical assistance that seems to be really there. You know, if there was a huge gap here, I would be concerned about trying to help out and provide something, but I don't see a huge gap either for the individual or the families. However, that being said, on the flip side of that is we always talk about hiring bonuses and retention bonuses. So, you know, if we want to call that this, which we can, I mean, we don't have any problem. I don't have problems calling it a retention program. You know, how do we, you know, there's more than one way to provide retention or hiring things for to keep employees here or to hire them is to have a program, right? Just like our medical plan. All in all, I think I'm saying is this is that to me, nothing more, and that is a innovative program that we can say as a city, if the employees decide that that's what we want to do, does the city want to participate that and take advantage of that, what the employees decided to do, and take advantage of it and say, well, let's turn that into a hiring retention program. That's what I'm seeing here, basically, for me.
Okay.
And if so, the only real crux of this, whether I would be supported or not, is can it be paid by HARPA? And that being said, I like your idea, Councilmember Fleming, about the future, but I don't believe I would have a hard time supporting that because of what I just mentioned. And if we're using HARPA, that's one-time money. It's not an ongoing cost, which one-time money is meant for special startups like this, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not sure if I want to do this because then it becomes an ongoing cost in the future as well. Why not 2026, 27, 28? So anyway, that's as we're discussing this, that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I'm going to move to Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And Lisa, thank you for enduring our questions. And yes, I still have more. And I agree with Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, because that's where I wanted to jump into this previous conversation. It feels like, however we slice this feels like a bonus for current employees of $1,000, because the city's paying it and it's going to be used by them, right? So that, to me, is bottom line what it is. I also like what Councilmember Fleming is talking about. If we're going to do that, then we should make it for all of the employees. I understand where Mayor Pro Tem's talking about it's one-time fees, and I like the notion if we could use ARPA, I think that would be good for the big number, the $51,000. And going forward for all employees, we don't hire a lot of people. You know, I mean, it's onesie, twosies. A whole bunch of years it's been zero. A few of those years we were laying folks off. So I don't anticipate if we open it up for other employees that it's going to be another $51,000, right? It'll be $1,000 here, you know, that kind of thing. And if we agree that we're going to make this a benefit, another benefit, kind of a bonus, then let's do it for all the employees. I agree with that. I'm wondering, though, if there is something, and I don't know what it would be, I'm just musing right now, I'm wondering if there's something that the city, if there's something that we need from employees, going back to the negotiation kind of standpoint, if there's something that we need from employees, that this is an opportunity to put that on the table. I'm not, open to just giving stuff away, you know, just because. I mean, they're great, they're doing great work, but we represent the citizens of this city. And what can we get that is needed? And I don't know the answer to that, Lisa. I would imagine that you do, given that that's your job every day. I just don't know, so I'm just putting it out there. I mean, this is a benefit of $1,000 to every employee. We're just going to give that away? Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of these questions will be kind of in a similar vein, but first, when we first hire an employee, how long before they vest into standard benefits, whatever they are? Is it 1 month, 3 months for medical, 6 months for retirement? How does that work?
Yeah, so for medical, it sort of depends on when you're hired. Medical takes place on the first day of the month when you're hired. So if you happen to be hired on, March 1st and that's a work day, then your benefits start March 1st. If you get hired in the middle of the month, your benefits will start the first of the following month. So that's how it works for medical. Retirement, much the same way. But with retirement, there's a couple different things. Retirement, there's vesting, right? So for example, our 401, it takes you 3 years to vest to get the city's portion of those funds. For PERS 2, it takes 5 years to vest for the employer's portion of those funds. For PERS 3, it's 10 years for the employer's portion of those funds. So that's how that works. But kind of generically across the board, most benefits start fairly close to when an employee is hired.
Okay, and then a couple follow-on questions with that. And again, thinking about parity from, employees, like who gets it, who doesn't, would we be setting, and maybe this is a Matt Kaiser question, if we are to give all current employees $1,000 right now, are we setting a precedent for future hires that could be legally challenged? If we decided...
In and of itself, Councilmember Wood, I'm not entirely convinced that you're looking so much at a precedent or expectation. I put it more in the expectation management category. I think the one other thing just to bear in mind too, and Lisa can comment on this a bit more, is depending on how such an act is structured, you then start to implicate certain tax concerns. The HRA VIBA, as I understand it, Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong on this, those employee contributions are put in tax-free and withdrawn tax-free, as opposed to a salaried bonus structure along the lines of what you're talking about. So there's certainly some of those implications in there as well to be mindful of.
Okay, thank you. And then just a comment I think I would support, if the council decides to go forward with this, I do think it should be an ongoing thing. I don't think it should be a one-time. Again, we're hiring, 3 people last year, and if we were to do it, that's $3,000. That's budget peanuts. It's not a big deal. And I would just think it would be, but if we do this, I would like us to do it because it makes the city more competitive with our peers, and being able to make that case saying, this is a benefit that we're going to give because we need to be competitive with our peer cities so we can retain and hire good employees. I know there's some positions we've been having a very difficult time filling. I don't know if $1,000 would make a difference in that or not, but I would like to understand that if it would. Yeah, it's better than zero. So,
Understood, Councilman.
okay, so here, very, very much appreciate looking into this, and I think that'll conclude my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. And now, Councilmember McCluskey, and I have some questions, so I'll follow her before moving on to round 3.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa, for bringing this to the City Council. I think it's a very intriguing idea, and a lot of my colleagues have stated similar statements that I would make, and I would like to say on their year anniversary date, if the council chooses to go forward with this, to provide the additional $1,000 if they go with the VIBA account. I would also like to know what is the total amount that the city is paying annually for the healthcare costs for our employees. And I would love to have ARPA funds pay for the initial cash out into this. That would be great if it could do that. So I'd be very interested in hearing what the outcome on that. But irregardless, I would like to say that, just to give this added incentive or almost a added compliment to the employees who have worked so hard for our city, to have something to help with some of their medical expenses that can occur. Even if they're at the 90% for their families, the 10% could be quite costly. Just depends on what that is. And then, as you mentioned, braces and dental work and things of that nature too, that's not typically fully covered in an insurance policy. So I'll close my comments there.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. I had a few questions and then some comments. Lisa, these programs typically have an administration fee, but they're usually a few dollars. Is that the case here?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's fairly minor.
All right. So what I want to take part of this decision and not make it ours, because I don't think it's ours. Whether or not the city's employees choose to move forward with the HR VIBA program or stay with the existing program is really essentially their decision. It has no impact to the city other than we want to provide good quality services, but which is to say to our employees, benefits that are meaningful and appropriate. So that becomes theirs. Our real question, I think, is whether or not we make a contribution in that process. So that's what it comes down to. And there's a couple of different ways I've been thinking about that. One other question. Lisa, many jurisdictions for virtually all employees have a probationary period, and typically it's 6 months or so. Do we do that?
We do. Ours is 6 months as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. So a couple of things that come to mind. Like Councilmember Keel, I'm used to working out something like this in the context of we give you something, we get something. Now, we have gotten their good services and through a very difficult period of time, which is to say through the pandemic. If this was arguably available to us through ARPA funds as a way for us to recognize our employees' strong efforts, very, very similarly to what we did with our police officers, or at least in part with the county. In fact, gosh, it's identical in terms of dollar amount. So there is a parallel here for us. I think that in itself is reasonable. I do kind of like the transactional thing because I'm used to that. But that's one option. We could also think about this as more of a retention or, as we've talked about, I don't know that people are lining up to exit. I hope not. But some recognition does help people stay where they are, and when they're visibly appreciated. In fact, I think that was some of our purpose with the police when we did this. The other item is if we were to tie this either to, as Councilmember McCluskey mentioned, a 12-month anniversary for new employees, or I would say another reasonable alternate would be after their probationary period, so we know they're a full member of the team and they didn't just start today and depart the day after they get the $1,000 VIVA contribution. Those are a few things, but I think the idea of using it in the context of full employment or full employee rights and thinking about it with ARPA, if that isn't available to us, I feel a little bit differently, and we can think about this more as an inducement, an incentive for employment with the city. That could deliver some value to us, and as a one-time contribution at their full not full vesting, but out of probation, I think it starts making a little bit of sense to me. Okay, those are my comments. I'm going to move on to Councilmember Fleming.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, just want to echo what everyone else has said on this subject. It's hard to picture this as not being an acknowledgement for services rendered to the city. So I like that vein of doing it. I did want to clarify one comment, and that was what Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa had said in terms of using the ARPA funds, in terms of is this going to be ongoing, indefinite. My original comment pertained to, since this is a 23-24 budget, that it would only pertain to employees we hire in 23-24. Certainly, if the council desires to carry it beyond that, I think it's a council decision to continue to offer that. But at least for that time period, because that's the budget we're working with right now, those are the funds that we have available. You know, also in light of the fact that, you know, we have, I consider perhaps one of the best health plans in the region. If we're funding 90% of dependents and 100% of employees, you really can't beat that anywhere else. So, you know, putting that aside, and I think our employees earn every bit of the benefits they have, so I don't want to minimize that. But I think knowing what we've had in this conversation tonight, this really is beginning to look more like a recognition and a bonus than it is an additional health proposal plan for employees. So I think those are the last of my comments tonight, but I think all the points that the council's made are very well taken.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. And perhaps as last words, we're going to be turning to the Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
No apple left for anybody.
There won't be any apple left after this comment. Councilmember McCluskey asked, what would be I have several questions, by the way, but I just wanted to finish off what she asked was, what is our city's contribution to the health plan?
The actual dollar amount for all staff?
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't
per
have-
person, is that like a fixed contribution that we give them, that we contribute?
So for medical, we provide 100% of the cost for medical and
And then-
90% of the cost for
okay.
dependent and spouse.
Okay, I'll ask it differently. I think I asked it wrong. Not a problem, it's on me.
Or I
And that
probably
is-
heard it wrong.
And is that probably is the cost to the city per year, which I know you don't have, but it'd be nice to have that information in the future. The other one is, I do, and I thank you, Councilmember Fleming, for acknowledging, and everybody else too, this is a retention and hiring program if we decide to go this. The reason it's important for me to understand, for us to understand that, because sometimes health benefits becomes, even though it is a benefit, it becomes kind of a necessity and almost like a given. This is not what this is. And I want to make sure that people, our employees, if we do this, that we're doing something special for them and recognizing them. This is not something, well, we want to, like I said earlier, give them a hand up because you need some medical help here or some medical funding assistance. That's not the case. The other one is, I certainly thank you for the tip, Mayor, on the 6-month probation, but I really think that 1 year anniversary date is, even for those that got hired this year, is appropriate. That is really, if you go anywhere, I've talked to several employers, it's a year if you want that bonus. And there's a reason for it. It's a lot of money. And people should at least be with us 1 year, and then they say, okay, there you got $1,000 spent on miscellaneous medical expenses. So I really would go in that direction more than the probation. The other one would be, I'm okay. I know there's some discussion with the employers in the future, but I'd like Councilmember Fleming's again comment about only for this biennium budget that we're discussing, which is, I think, appropriate, not to lock future council members, but also ourselves, because we don't know what 2 years is going to entail in the future. We have no clue, and it certainly is a good way for us to do that, to be able to look at that, just like we do and how we tax our citizens with a TBD and other things. This is, I think, a good way to check on that, and not just make it automatically. And then I think that would be, oh, there is one more. Can they, since the Mission Square program does not disappear, and people have, and of course, it started with the intent that they would not withdraw anything from it until they leave, and that's still the case but the question is, can they still continue to contribute to the Mission Square program even though they're starting up this program?
No, it has to be, everyone has to contribute or no one can contribute. So we would essentially, if staff decided to go with VIBA, there would be no more contributions and no individual choice to make contributions to the Mission Square program.
Okay, so, okay, that stops. I mean, I know the money's to be there for when they leave, but no more contributions from the individuals that they can put in there for later on.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Well, Council, I think we've come to the end of our agenda. So, yeah,
Did I eat up the apple for it?
there we go. I think the horse is fed, the apple is gone, all the bites are out of it. And Lisa, thank you for your help in helping us understand what the proposal is and give us so we have an opportunity to figure out how we'd like to move forward with this. While I'm not sure we have a specific direction in mind, we'll let you know as we move on with this. And I guess a lot of this has to do with our employees' choice. So, all right. Well, again, Council, thank you. I'm going to call, unless there's an objection, we'll call this evening's meeting adjourned.